Sir, I hope my screen is visible.
Your screen is visible and you can start presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dhiren, and our paper is on repercussions of incorporating filters in CNN model to boost the diagnostic ability of SARS-CoV-2 virus using chest-computed tomography scans, popularly known as CT scans. So, as an intro, all of a sudden, pandemic COVID-19, which has threatened the world with its high morbific and transmission rate, it is vital to accurately detect and determine the traces of the infection, as it caused around 62 lakh deaths. And numerous researchers have set out to propose a virus detection solution using CT scans based on deep learning. Yet, an accurate comparison of these techniques is not available. We aim to suggest a CNN model that assists in enhancing accuracy to detect the virus using CT scans by incorporating different. So, major question would be why not RT-PCR instead of CT scans or X-rays? Techniques like RT-PCR, also popularly known as reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, has become a standardized detection approach for SARS-CoV-2, as it is performed specifically based on the virus. But there are a few limitations for RT-PCR, as it has a sensitivity rate that is low and holds a range of 60% to 70%. Test methods also plays a major role, and expenses are also high, long turnaround, and there are limited test capabilities in many countries, and etc. So why CT scans? CT scans are used for our study because of their wide availability and usage. The diagnostic performance of COVID-19 detection has also improved in hospitals with this. So let's do investigation conducted by Chensi et al. On a set of 1014 COVID-19 patients states that 601 out of 1014 patients tested positive for the virus using RT-PCR, whereas 888 out of 1014 patients were detected positive using CT scans. Statistically, there are 59% of patients who were diagnosed positive using RT-PCR, and 88% of patients were diagnosed positive using CT scans. Hence, CT scans are recommended for have PCR test with symptoms of the virus. So this is a comparison of COVID-19 CT scan of a person having COVID-19 and a healthy CT scan. So as we can observe, uh, what we tend to observe is the ground glass opacities, which are usually peripheral or central for a COVID patient. And we also check if the reversed halo sign and crazy paving is present. If a predominant distribution in an axial plane is available, uh, and observable. And, carniocordial distribution is present in the upper lobes or the lower lobes. So we observe these in a CT scan of a person who has COVID, and this is the comparison of healthy CT scan as we can observe. So the data sets that we utilized for our study are accessed from Kaggle. The dataset contains around 5,000 images of 3 different categories of data: negative, positive, and uncertain COVID-19 CT scan imagings. Evidently, there are many proposals on image analysis to virus prognosis using ML-based algorithms to assist the medical practitioners to diagnose and treat efficiently using these radiographic images of the chest. So this is the algorithm and framework of the CNN model that we tend to propose. We can observe from the figure that there are 3 fully connected layers, 1 flattened layer, and 2 dense layers. The first fully connected layer, the second fully connected layer consists of CoV-2D layer, max pooling, and batch normalization layer each. And the third connected layer consists of 1 CoV-2D layer and 4th fully connected layer consists of convolutional layer and batch normalization, etc. So all the convolutional layers used a kernel size of 3 into 3. Max pooling used is 2 into 2. The activation function used are ReLU in hidden layers and softmax in final dense. That are 32116,743, out of which 640 are non-trainable and the rest are trainable. All the images are normalized and standardized using standardization and normalization techniques. Then we resized them into a fixed dimension of 48 into 48 to maintain uniformity. Here we can observe the table of the proposed model incorporated with different filters. The proposed model incorporated with Gabor filter has like rest. Hence, we are considering the proposed model incorporated with the Gabor filter. And this is the graphical representation of the model accuracy and loss incorporated with Gabor filter. Uh, this is a comparison of the model with the latest methods, the pre-trained methods and the state-of-the-art methods, as we call them. The model is studied in detail and the effectiveness of the suggested model is compared with these methods like VGG 19, VGG 7. Concept of VGG 19 and 16 are same, except VGG 19 supports 19 layers. The 16 and 19 stand for the number of convolutional layers in the model. And the exception model is a CNN model, a CNN that is 71 layers deep. The performance of the proposed CNN model is evaluated on filtered and non-filtered test images separately. This table exhibits in detail the train and test accuracies and losses. With the dataset, the proposed model included with the highest accuracy. Consequently, VGG 16 and 19 has attained a better accuracy compared to that of the exception model. So from the results, we have concluded that the model architecture incorporated with Gabor filter provides a better accuracy comparatively. So here we can see the comparison of model accuracy and loss attained by the models in comparison to the Gabor filter. So there is a question on how the proposed the model has a high sensitivity rate, specificity rate, and accuracy regarding the identification of cases with COVID-19. The results of high performance of the model make it a useful tool to screen COVID-19, and it promises results of the model indicate that this model can be helpful for the medical professionals globally. This research area is of a potential study and it is of significant interest as we are living this post-pandemic, new variants of COVID-19 emerging as substantial threats of infectiousness or virulence. So finally, I would like to conclude that if we could have an automated detection techniques available and health professionals get information and data in a timely manner, the diagnosis and management of COVID-19 would be more efficient. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Then I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Some comparison you have shown. Can you go there in that slide quickly?
Yes, sir.
Go there. Go back. Oh, no. Another.
Okay.
Wait there.
Okay, sir. Yes.
So here you compared with this Gabor filter, VGG, exception model, etc. Which one is your proposal out of this model?
The Gabor filter, sir.
Gabor filter is your proposal. Are you sure?
No, sir. The model which we have applied the Gabor filter, we are like displaying.
You can apply anything, just different thing. You can apply existing thing, you can apply which one use your proposal? That I want to know. Out of this 4 model, which one is your model?
This is just a
And
comparison, sir. We are not proposing.
the existing system you compared.
Yes, sir. We are just
Any,
comparing.
any proposal from your side? Any new thing?
We are working on proposing a model, sir.
No, that
This
is
is just
different.
a
Is it
comparison
there
of
now in
latest
this
thing.
paper? In this paper, are you proposing anything new?
Only the algorithm we are proposing, sir.
What algorithm you proposed? Can you go there?
Yes. This is the algorithm.
What will be the input of this algorithm? Data set containing images of COVID-19. What are those images? Any images or some specific images?
They are the CT scans, sir, of the lung. There are 3 different like there are 3 different areas, like the person affected with COVID, the person that is not affected with COVID, and answer.
This is not your algorithm. Actually, you tested the Geber filter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it is, you cannot claim it is my algorithm I tested, not like that. This Geber filter you are using with dataset.
Yes, sir.
So if dataset is different, that does not mean it is a new work. Okay. So
Okay.
CNN also you are using, that is also COVID-19 dataset CNN. What is that thing? The before end evaluation COVID-19 underscore dataset underscore CNN. What is that thing?
Um,
COVID-19
we are
underscore dataset underscore CNN. What is that? How you are getting that one?
testing.
No, you are using no COVID-19 underscore and after ending COVID-19 underscore dataset underscore CNN within bracket COVID-19 underscore dataset, and it is an array you are showing. What is that thing? What is the meaning of this?
The data set is
Whenever you write any algorithm, it should be complexity should be tested. Mathematically, projections should be there. Each and every step will consume some time. So time complexity is not there. Okay. And what is the space complexity? That is also not there. You just wrote the algorithm. Actually, you wrote the program. From the program, you converted, wrote in the form of algorithm. If I am not wrong.
yes, sir.
So that is not advisable. So when you are writing the program, where it is executing, whether your program will be completed within the finite time, all this will come into play when you are proposing any algorithm. So this thing you please take care as a undergraduate student. It is a good effort, I must say. At least you are using Geber filter and some other filter also available. You check all this. The Geber filter is very old type of thing, and recent so many filters are available. You check it. Modified filters, combinations of filters.
Okay, sir.
So all this you go through, you will get a more good result, and it is a good, what I feel it is a good effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We'll try to incorporate all these and we'll try to work on this. Thank you so much for your suggestions, sir.
Any participants wish to ask any question can raise the hand. Krishnamohan sir, any questions from your side?
Yes. Hello, Dhiren?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it going to support all the different types of data sets? where we have the different types of images.
Yes, sir. Recently we have, excuse me. Yes, sir. We have like resized. I think we can um, work on that. We have
The
also
image,
tried to.
the image file formats, we are having a number of file formats. Is it going to support?
Yes, sir. Once we resize the image once we resize the image, it like the pre-processing. Once the image is pre-processed, it we can proceed with this.
Do we need to convert them into one format to another format?
Yes, sir.
So what is the format it is going to operate on?
Um, 128 into 128, sir. Like
So you are speaking about image size.
yes, sir.
I'm asking about the format. Say we have the PMP, JPEG, PNG, GIF, all these are the different formats.
JPEG, sir. We are using JPEG.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, then thank you for the presentation. Now I will go for the next presentation. Paper ID 98, software development estimation, cost using ANN in machine learning. Paper ID 98, please raise the hand. Paper ID 98, you are given presenter access. You can share your screen, you can unmute yourself and speak. Your screen is visible. You can unmute yourself, go to the slideshow, and you can present.
Hello, good morning to the all dignitaries and all panel members with the spectators present here. Today I am delighted to share my presentation on software cost estimation using artificial neural networks. Let me quickly introduce my team who really worked hard for this. I am Mohammad Abdul Rahman speaking on behalf of my two other friends M. Shai Mokshit and N. Sai, Nitin Sai, and our guide is Mrs. Pupala Ramya.
Abdul Rahman, any issue? Mr. Abdul Rahman, your voice is not audible. Abdul Rahman, share your screen again. Mr. Abdul Rahman, are you there? Okay, that was a technical issue. We'll move to the next paper ID. Paper ID 99. Paper ID 99 and generic flow of cyber physical systems, a comprehensive survey. Paper ID 106. Mental disorder detection in social networks using SPM classification and improvised approach. Paper ID 106. Paper ID 106.
That is used for cultivation without the use of soil for growing the crops. And like it is basically growing of crops using just the water with some effective nutrient solution for the effective results in the cultivation for the growth of the crops. And so as the hydroponics cultivation uses only the water for the growth of the plants, like we don't need to use pesticides that are harmful uh, for the for the crops that are cultivated. So hydroponics helps in prevention of soil degradation and waterlogging issues. And this is the primary advantage of the hydroponic system. And like hydroponic system can also be automated and developed indoor. Like if there's any shortage of lands, even this can be the best method to go for high yields of the crops. And hydroponics can also be used for vertical farming, cultivation like that are basically followed in some shortage of land countries like Singapore and Qatar. So these are some of the basic papers that we have gone through for a project to carry out. And uh, like we have 15 references, but these six are the basic paper that we took our idea from. And so this is the methodology we have worked on. Like this is the primary block diagram uh, like for the project that we are working on. It has some sensors and components with uh, and actuators with relay module and external battery supply. We also have a Wi-Fi module, the electronic Wi-Fi the Wi-Fi module to enable the internet connection for the microcontroller and the internet. And we have integrated this RTC called a real-time clock module to track over the real time and date for the proposed system. I'll talk about the real-time clock in detail little in the coming slides. So basically, the hydroponic system needs this kind of setup. This setup is called the nutrient film technique, and like in hydroponics, we have different kinds of techniques that we can take upon the process. So one of the most efficient technique is this nutrient film technique. This nutrient film and this hydroponics cultivation initially involved this stages like selection of crop for cultivation. So basically, we chose mint leaves that can be easily grown initially to test out the results of the working system. Next, we have the selection of inert substrate like cocoa pit. It's called basically the coconut coir. First, we need to germinate the seeds that is sowed inside the cocoa pit to generate the roots, and then transfer it into the pipe system that is basically supplied with water for continuous growth. So this is the NFT based system has that is basically uses a PVC pipe for the channeling of water and maintaining the cycle of logging and draining uh, of water through the NFT based system. This is the basic NFT based system that we developed. And next, so to incorporate the electronic system, like to bring in the sensors, the microcontroller, and enable the IoT features, we use some sensors and actuators that are analog and digital in nature with serial communication protocols to connect the microcontroller and the sensors. So the methodology that we take on this project is to implement the real-time clock system that actually generates the time and date that keeps running for the system to have the uh, track on the process that is taking on. And next, we have the ESP8266 Wi-Fi module to set up the internet connectivity. And finally, we have this one point, we have a water flow sensor that helps us to supply exactly 1.5 liter nutrient solution into the water logging pipes. These pipes contains water, so we need to exactly send the amount that is required through the pipes. So water flow sensor helps us to supply water nutrient solution into the pipes. So this is the methodology, like this is the basic functioning of the program loop, like what happens if water flow levels, which like when the water, this is the methodology that we have worked on. Next, we have the different types of sensors we have integrated with the system. Like we have this water level float switch sensor, and it works on this the program it turns on the water pump if it is high and turns off if it's low. And next we have this DHT11 sensor, and we have set up on threshold between 21 to 37 degrees Celsius for proper growth of the crop. Next, we have this DSA18B20 probe sensor. That is also the temperature sensor, but it is used for water temperature, which is submersible inside of water. And we have set a threshold between 22 to 27 degrees here. Next, we have this pH sensor uh, to find out the pH in the nutrient solution, because pH is the primary thing that we have to focus for the hydroponic system. The basic suggested from the literature review that we have taken is 4.5 to 6.5 is the basic efficient range for the pH to be maintained for effective cultivation of the crop. So we have this pH high. We have two solutions involved here, like a pH high solution, pH low solution. If the pH is less than 4.5, we use this actuators to actuate the motor for the pH high solution dosing pump, and pH high solution uh, is dropped into the nutrient solution. Next, if it is greater than 6.5, then the pH low solution is used for the lowering of pH in the nutrient solution. Finally, we have this YFS201 water flow sensor that I've already talked upon. Like this helps us to know the water flow rate and amount of water flown through the NFT pipe logging. We should not it helps us to maintain a water level into the logging system. Next, so this is the basic flow diagram of the system that I've explained now. This is the basic flow chart of the program. And so these are the tools used that for the project, like ThinkSpeak for the IoT dashboard. We collect data and we store it here. Next, we have this real-time clock module. Like we have integrated this using this STM32F407 development board, and the primary microcontroller for the sensors that are connected is Arduino Mega 2560 and ESP82661 for the serial communication between the microcontroller and the cloud. These are the sensors and actuators that we have used. I've already talked about the sensors that I've used, and these are some of the actuators that I've used, like 8-channel 5-volt relay module and 12-volt diaphragm motor for the pH high solution and low solution to be used, and this 12-volt DC submersible pump that is used for the primary water storage into the nutrient solution, and 16x2 display to display the real-time clock, the real time and date for the system. So the results, this is the hardware setup that we have implemented. It has the complete electronic setup, and you can see in the back we have the NFT system with the crop there, and this is the main storage of water tank and the other electronic components here used here. These are the observations and analysis that we have logged into the IoT dashboard. So the primary parameters that we have worked on is the temperature, the room temperature, then the humidity and the water temperature with pH level and water flow rate with the water level. And the water level in the nutrient solution. So these are the results for the milk cultivation, like whole automated system to successfully maintain the pH, atmospheric temperature, humidity, and water temperature to generate mint. And like there were little variations in the atmospheric temperature, like as mint actually required for lowering temperatures, we used air conditioned rooms to cultivate the crop. So this is the result, and the conclusion is to like these hydroponic systems are effective for for the usage of cultivation of crops in less spaced lands, and it can also be used for household usages, like to cultivate some vegetables inside the house itself, and can suffice our daily needs. So these are the conclusions, and we have the final conclusion is that we have automated the hydroponic system that is traditional in nature, and some we have enabled some IoT features into this. And the future scope is to integrate solar panels, like for power sources. We can integrate DC power outlets, and use renewable power resources. And also this like we have implemented this into a smaller scale, but this can be used into multi-level. Like this structure is single level, and this can be developed into multi-level that can be used for indoor cultivation, that is popularly used in Singapore and other countries. And so this is the future scope of our project, and these are the references. So thank you, sir, for the time for the presentation.
The session gets an answer for it.
Hello.
Yeah, Danish, please wait.
Yeah, sure, sir, sure.
Participants wish to ask any question, you can raise the hand. Sir, now you can
Yes,
unmute
yes,
yourself.
yes,
Yes, sir.
yes.
You can share the screen and you can start your presentation.
Uh, sir, is my screen is visible to you all?
No, sir.
No. Okay, sir. Just a minute. So please check now.
No, sir. You click on the share and
Okay.
select screen one.
Okay, sir. Share screen one. Sir,
Yes, sir. Now it is
it's visible.
1 minute. It is starting
More-
the screen share. Just a
yes.
second. Few seconds.
Can I start, sir?
Sir, it's not shared. It is in the process. Just wait for a couple of seconds.
No, sir.
No, sir. Again, you stop sharing and share it again.
Stop
You,
sharing.
you, you can see your PPT there that you can share. Yes, sir. Now it is okay. Right. It's coming, sir.
It's visible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, sir. Can I proceed, sir?
Yes, sir. You can proceed.
Yes, yes.
Now it's gone, sir. Again.
And all,
Let's share it again.
thank you very much. Uh, thank you very much for giving opportunity to
Sir,
present my paper. My paper is
sorry,
one.
sir. Sorry to interrupt you.
Sir,
The presentation was not visible.
I'll need my co-author in this. So let me introduce briefly. We have seen over the globe, if we compare, India do have a lot of cancer patients, and the biggest problem in cancer is first is diagnosis, and when it is diagnosed at the right time, we can prevent this cancer. Also, we can treat the patient. So if we look at cancer is having several different of a cancers. This paper addresses a specific issues with only classification of cancer cells using biopsy image, which are in a form of digital whole slide. So what is digital whole slide? Whatever the tissues we want to assess as a cancer or non-cancerous, always a small sample is taken from the organ and it is sent to a process called pathology. And in the pathology, there will be clinicians who will do this pathological process, and they come up with a sort of information called digital whole slide, wherein tissue information, cell level information is available in a form of a digital slide. The tissue information which is available in a form of a digital image. So this image will give you the level at the tissue levels, and here the pathologist will classify the tissues are cancerous or non-cancerous. But when we look at the dimension of the image and the magnitude of the data, whatever these machines generate, it is in terms of uh, uh, dimension is little larger, which ranges between 10 GB to 20 GB of information, and pathologist has to go through each slides. So we can imagine a single small image with such a 4x sort of a magnification will have a lot of information, and whatever the information is available for our eyes, they appear similar. At continuously monitoring this digital whole slide, the doctor will have under a pressure. At some stage, will not be able to categorize which is cancer and which is non-cancerous tissue. So in this context, if machine can intervene and classify these cells as cancerous or non-cancerous, that will reduce the burden of a pathologist. And this paper addresses basically onto only segregating the cancer and non-cancerous tissue. So in this implementation, we have used ResNet convolution neural network, which is one of the best model. We refer to the literatures. Let me go straight to the literature review. If you refer to the literature review, most of these papers will address with CNN as a classifier, and out of that, if we take 99% of the classifiers are models are ResNet 50. These relatively, when we compare with the models, they perform very well and also with the classification. This overview, and we went with assuming that this classifier will definitely classify tissues with cancerous or non-cancerous to the best possible extent. So here main aim is to classify cancerous and non-cancerous tissues. So our objective was with the collection of this data, and whatever the data we have collected, it is with open source data which is available on internet from the Kaggle, and in which we have considered more than 25,000 samples of data. So here we have divided our work into two segments, actually segmentation and classification, but my paper presentation is only restricted with classification. So whatever the data we have, this is a brief overview of the algorithm. Then this is the data sets. So out of that data sets, whatever the sample we use, the classifier should categorize as cancerous or non-cancerous. Block diagram. So pre-processing involves resizing, splitting the data. Then, argumentation is also involved to have the multiple data sets. And this ResNet 50 is trained and tested and validated with a ratio of 20 is to 15 is to 15, and whatever the input which is the test image will be classified as cancerous or non-cancerous. So these are the steps involved in the entire algorithm. These are the implementation, and these are the final results, the accuracy and testing loss. So also we have a table which will give you an overview with different models like VGG16 we have taken, then efficient net, then B0, B7, AlexNet, and ResNet 50 we have considered. So out of that we have observed ResNet 50 gave the best classification accuracy. Also, we have considered certain parameters like precision, recall, support, and F1 score for different set of data sets. So this is the final with result. Let me proceed to the conclusion. The conclusion of this implementation is this will certainly help the pathologist to segregate at least some of the most of the samples. They can scan through the all data set, then pathologist can assess his assessment with the whole slide image, also with this machine developed cancers and non-cancerous kind of cells, and he can do a comparison, and he can at least at the certain stress level of the pathologist could be reduced. And as future direction from the implementation, I felt that segmentation is the biggest task, which already a lot of implementations are available, but there is a scope to still address the segmentation part. And here we have unit segmentation, which is really giving good results. These are the differences. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, sir, uh, uh,
Participants having any queries can raise the hand and ask the questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yes,
sir.
sir. I can hear, sir. Please, sir.
Sir, I have some, not a question, it is an interest, you can say.
Yes, sir.
Why CNN is used? Because now I observed in medical imaging or recognition system, people are using RNN or LSTM, all this, but you are using CNN. Is there any, are you getting good result for that or something else? Reason?
Sir, this is my first implementation with biomedical imagery. So I thought, let me start with CNN. My end names are combine LSTM with CNN. That's the next task. It is just like there is no such like influence. CNN still we can improve the results by combining LSTM with CNN. That is true, sir. As a beginner, I started with ResNet 50. Also, most of the literature recommend that CNN 50, ResNet 50 is good classifier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving opportunity.
Most welcome, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good day, sir. Good day, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the presentation. We have a short break and we'll resume back after 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Sir, audible. You are audible, sir. Respond, sir. Hello.
Other
Price, price में.
price related.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes, sir.
Just one, sir, you can unmute yourself.
No.
Sir, it's audible, sir. Now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Paper ID 125. Detection of stock price manipulation by market manipulators, a solution approach. Sir, please raise the hand so that I can give the presenter rights. Now you can unmute yourself, sir. You can share the screen and present your paper.
Sir, is it visible, sir? Hello, sir.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, sir.
Go for slideshow and you can start your presentation.
F7. Not screen maximize, sir. Their option is
Sir, click on
maximization.
slideshow.
Slideshow outline.
Beside animation. On the top menu.
Beside animation has slides. Okay, sir.
No, on the top of slideshow.
Okay, sir.
From beginning. Click on from beginning.
This is
Yes.
first slide, sir.
Yes, you can start.
Very good morning to all of you. This is Dr. Basant going to present one research paper entitled on solution approach for detection of stock price manipulation by market operators. This is the entitled paper, sir. And today going to present in this paper, first of all, introduction, objective, purpose, methodology, and solution approach 1 and solution approach 2, and then after proposed technical solution level 1, proposed technical solution level 2, and limitation and future work and conclusion. Okay, so basically in these papers we have designed, sir, stock market operators or vendors just take the data and fake information, just advertisement about the any share like that badly advertised about the any share company share, so that's they get the money black marketing, so like that, sir. So that's why we develop a method to find out such kinds of things or detect which appropriately find out the method to okay, just going, sir, this one. The stock market operator are those who tend to artificially boost up volume in stock by trading in circles and raising the price of their securities. This exercise continue until volume increase and the price raise autonomously. That means the stock market or operators just giving fake knowledge in market, so that share is very good and that is company may be hike in the near future, so that's one people just trust upon that and just purchase, and after some few days or after some time whenever the not increase, such kind of things. So such kinds of things are occurred in market. So that's why in my proposal techniques, just find out such kinds of threatening in the market, sir. So this is buying a low quality stock at low price. So because that person just trust on that person, so that's they purchase, buying a low quality stock low price, sharing fake news that particular stock will go up, buy more and let price touch new height to attract more retail. Such kinds of things happening in market. So objective of that to identify various method and process to check whether the stock is changing itself or by the manipulated person or that means malicious notes or another persons which fake knowledge giving. So in this my objective is that how can you identify finding to implement these methods and build a computational model to detect stock price manipulation. So this is the basic objective of this research, sir. In this paper, we present a solution approach which can be implemented to detect such manipulation of stock price and avoid such analysis activity. Already I have discussed about that. So this is the proposed methods. First of all, you have to in level 1 collect the data and level 2 analyze them data. So what's really happening in the market. Then after you have purchased or take the decision. So this is the proposed methodology. First of all, list of all stocks, level 1 analysis and data collection, and then you make the design the methods so that you detect such kinds of malicious activities. Solution approach 1. In this level, first of all, feature of stock, company stocks, that brands, that investors, such first of all, you just collect that data. And by applying a statistical analysis, list out the possible stock that may have been manipulated or not, sir. And in solution approach 2, it may be suddenly hike in stock price crossing some threshold value. Order book can be accessed for the detection of stock price manipulation, detection of bulk buying by a single investor. Sometimes there may be one single person just purchase all share and then treat it, and after some time, after few time, then he release in market. So that types of happening in markets, sir. So that the type of things analysis in this approach, sir. And once you figure out the possible list of stock which have been maybe manipulated, we process level 2 analysis. In this level, computationally more complex than level 1. In level 1, we may have only one or very few source of data for data gathering, but here in level 2 we need to access the web. In second stage, sir, we just work done on the web internet, like that which keyword are frequently used, which is not used, and also check the social media like Facebook, or there are some message has come. So that's why you analysis on that things, video, YouTube, like that, sir. In this solution approach to, you just go through the internet based technical solution. The input value of all possible stock which could be manipulated, we can choose the basic parameter or some more parameters. After choosing the required parameters, simply use a statistical tool to process data sets, like we use in this logistical regression, SVM, and decision tree. This is the machine learning techniques on which using of that you can easily find out what's occur in that, sir. And this level we need to collect data from the web, and that search engine use the web crawler, that is used for the which keyword frequently used, where it has message flashing in YouTube or social networks. So that's crawling method is used, sir, in this. After data collection, we propose to implement the advanced data analytical model, which may be neural network model in future. This is the future plan, I think. Network model or any model which can process multidimensional data. The search engine will run continuously to collect data from the web. So in the limitation of this research is that it not detecting whenever any pandemic situation, flooding, any type of things suddenly come. So that's maybe price up or down. So that type of things not consider on this, sir. In near futures may consider upon these things which are already discussed, like pandemic situation, flooding, like that. So this paper is focused on evaluating the solution method which could be used directly and can be implemented using any data analytical tool or can be employed with the machine learning model. Stock manipulation is very common nowadays in the stock market, and there is no or very few solution implemented to make investor aware of this period. So this is the paper, sir. Actually, I have designed or create three peoples here, basically designed by that, and also I contribute here. Thank you, sir. Any query, sir? Hello?
Sir, please wait. The
Yes,
participants
sir.
can raise a hand for asking the questions. Be given permissions to ask. I request the question first to ask the queries.
Screen is not.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, from minimum one question has to be raised so that I'm taking the advantage of that. So
Yes, sir. Yes.
just tell us in 2-3 lines what is the novelty of this work.
Novelty of this, sir, basically is just analysis of the market value share about what happening there, and then you have to detect what's actual, whether it is really suddenly price of any share is increased by manipulator or by company itself. Maybe sometimes some fraud persons that take the entire share, and after a few days just sell in high price. So such kinds of things happening in market. One person maybe lost some money in this regard. Suppose you trust upon that, you just purchase, and after few days that company is just lose each and everything. So that's why we just create or design a model to how can you find the best share of any company. So that type of things basically discuss in this paper, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. You can stop screen sharing now.
Okay,
Paper
sir.
ID 121, please raise the hand.
So can you please confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, it's visible and your voice is audible. You can proceed with the presentation.
Thank you. Firstly, good afternoon to all the professors and fellow researchers. I'm Surya, and the paper which I've written is on blockchain, and it's titled Blockchain and its Idiosyncratic Effects on Energy Consumption and Conservation. It's co-authored by Dr. K. Mridula Devi, Dr. Tirupati Rao, Professor K. Swati, and Swati Odiman. So I would like to start with my presentation. First, initially by just laying an overview of what blockchain is. So generally, we live in a world where everything's a distributed system. So why not even technology? So generally, everything we have studied till date or we have implemented till date is hierarchical from administration to every other
thing. So blockchain is something which makes everything decentralized and distributed. Those are the two buzzwords over here. So what exactly is an advantage of using blockchain? It is where everything parallelly can get monitored, so that there are no frauds or there are no overwritings done over the ledger which is shared in this particular technology. And a very crucial part of this is using cryptography, where each and every block or node, a blockchain is made of consistent nodes that are encrypted by particular algorithms, let's say like SHA-256. So this is how generally a blockchain technology works. So again, the most important word of blockchain is a distributed ledger. Like already stated, it emphasizes on being distributed and decentralized. And achieving that is actually not cannot be done in a direct way. Just going into the history, it's invented in the late 1990s, where they have actually introduced this so that the ledgers of a particular medical system are not overwritten by other doctors due to some trust issues in a hospital. That is the theory of where it has been originated from. But later, at around early 2010s, it was coined something called a bit. There is something called Bitcoin, which is termed out of it. Bitcoin generally uses blockchain, and we were more familiar with the word Bitcoin before blockchain became a buzzword too. So later, when Bitcoin, turned to become famous and emerged successfully, that was where people started focusing on what blockchain is. So generally, blockchain as a technology, it's a technology which is used to implement Bitcoin at that particular use case scenario. Just how Bitcoin is a use case scenario of blockchain, there are many other use cases. So one such use case which I've chosen at this particular paper is energy consumption. So generally, we are living in a world where we are in need of greener energy, and where we are in a situation where we cannot afford to lose energy, because that is how the earth is trending up to become. So this is where I have inculcated blockchain in my paper. So firstly, my paper is divided into two parts. One, the use case. I've done a intensive case study on one particular use case called microgrids, and the second one is my proposed solution for distributing energy globally. So the first, coming to the use case which I've taken over here is actually it is not of India's. So it is from Brooklyn. So generally there's something called a microgrid. A microgrid is something which is a smart grid where no third party energy providers are involved. And microgrid, like the name tells, it is limited to a very particular small area. Let's say we have a very small area of 10 kilometers radius, and in that you'll be having, let's say, 45 commercial buildings and the other residential areas. Let's say each residential area has a photovoltaic cell or any energy producing consumption which is at their end, and let's say there's a hospital in that area, for example. So now you generally in these days we are using a lot of solar panels, and let's say in more developed countries this is already a huge practice. So let's say we need 10 kilowatts per day, a vast example, a 10 kilowatts, let's say that, and someone's generating 20 kilowatts. So now they have an excess of 10 kilowatts, which is generally going down the drain. So instead of that, they can actually share it with a commercial space, let's say a hospital which is in the region. We can share it with them, and they in turn, using the proof of work in a blockchain, can actually give them some voucher kind of thing where they can, get a free treatment for one particular service. So this is how a smart contract works. So this is where this case study has come, and this case study, after researching more about the case study in the paper, the best thing which I found over here is they have actually saved around 5% of energy loss because of third-party providers. We know how third-party providers work. They take in the energy from a particular place and then transmit it back. During transmission, there is something called an energy loss. But in a microgrid, since it's a very limited area and there is no third-party provider, you're firstly saving energy. The second thing, there's no power wastage. And the third thing, you're reaping benefits out of something which you're sharing. And the fourth thing is transparency, since there is no third-party provider there. So this is a small use case of how blockchain can be used in an energy sector. And Brooklyn Microgrid being a very huge success, I've stated that as a use case and I've done some study on that. And also just a fun fact which can actually, lean interest towards it is by 2022, there is around $30 billion market around energy consumption using blockchain. That's how huge the market is actually growing at this moment. So this is a use case which I have studied on. And next, coming to the proposed system, like I've told, this energy consumption not only can be done in a microgrid, but can be done in a global phase. I do understand this is the paper is a lot theoretical because implementing this would require a lot of budget allocation. But basing on the small projects which have worked on blockchain and Ethereum using Solidity, there is an algorithm which I've drafted. So this is the main context of the paper, the algorithm which I've drafted, which is divided into three different parts. So firstly, here, as you can see on the screen, I'm using Solidity to define all the variables of the blockchain. If you can see, there is something called energy saving certificate, which is involved over here. So energy saving certificate is something similar to a smart contract. So when in a blockchain, trust is the most important relationship over here. So every node is allocated with a smart contract. Since even a small disruption in the whole node will break the blockchain, we will be having something called a smart contract which re-verifies and verifies twice, so that the chain is consistent. If you can see, there is something called overachieved calculate savings issue certificates and all defined in Solidity over here. These are just basic data structures which are defined in a language called Solidity. It is not very complex, to be honest. So those are just defined. This is just an example of the definition. And in order to implement, like I've told, this is divided into three modules. The first one, as you can see, point A, you will be creating something called a register meter in the language Solidity, which I've preferred. So generally, once you create a register meter, this is where a person comes into the chain. So when someone is supposed to be added to the chain, it's consensus system where every other node actually needs to give their consensus. When it's more than 50% consensus, only then a node can actually enter a chain. So for that, you can have various methodologies, like you can check their ether level, or you can see how much energy can they provide. So basing on different calculations, you can enter the blockchain. That being the first step. The second is book.sol. I've just named it book.sol because, like I've told, blockchain is about ledgering. You log everything very precisely for transparency. And as we log everything in a ledger, which is generally a book, it is named a book. So it is also written in Solidity, the whole algorithm. So firstly, you will be having different parameters like sell order and a buy order. Like the name itself defines, the sell order is when a particular person has enough energy to be sharing with the other required industry, which is in the blockchain. You will be creating a sell order, and after its consensus, after the highest bidder takes it in, you will be receiving whatever is required back to you after the buy order is done. After the order is successfully accepted consensually by all the nodes in the chain, you will be selling and sharing the energy. For example, over here we have just written a simple if else statement, that the minimum requirement over here is 1 kilowatt per hour. So it depends on what the requirement is at the moment. You can design the algorithm basing on your current need. Like I've told, this is just a theoretical implementation of it. So once a particular energy is accepted, that this is the required part of energy, we will be sharing the energy to and fro between the commercial system and the house over there. This can be done over a large scale also. And the last thing is the migrations, where after the energy is done to and fro, like I've told, this has a two-check process, the smart contract, because any node in a disruption will disrupt the whole blockchain. So it has two steps over here. One, once the transaction is successfully done, you implement a set done function, and then you will update the log address. So generally, updating the log address over here means every node is connected to the previous node via a hash, and the hash along with the node address log address can be added, so that the chain is always continuous and sequential, so that it does not break. This is how the whole system works. So coming to the outcomes, like these outcomes are the same as of a blockchain outcome. Like if you implement blockchain on any service, let's say, and like for Bitcoin or for energy consumption over here, the outcomes are always 90% gonna be the same. The first thing being transparency. Here we are achieving transparency by the first part of the algorithm, where we are registering everyone via consensus, and then going through the other criterias of the system by which we judge if it's correct or no. It's firstly we are checking the energy check, then we are cross checking the offer. Like told, we will recheck it twice. We are double checking and triple checking it for security, that if the price over there is the highest bidder and if it is actually required and if they're giving something back to us. And the last being updating the log, that is the final execution. That is the third part of the algorithm. So even since that is achieved via this algorithm, this actually achieves whatever we require from a blockchain enabled energy consumption system. So this has been what I've been trying to achieve. And so yeah, there are drawbacks to this. One being the energy consumption. I know it sounds ironical because we are implementing blockchain on energy consumption, but blockchain as a service, as a platform and technology takes in a lot of energy. There are some things called proof of stake which are at work right now to reduce the energy consumption. That can be one of the limitations of this process. And coming to the future work, it is just a theoretical implementation. So implementing it via a distributed system can be considered as a future work. So that has been my time. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Any questions from the participants on session chat?
Surya, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, Devnath, sir. How are you doing? Good
I
afternoon,
thought,
sir.
I thought I'll ask something, some doubt from your
Sure,
algorithm,
sir. Please. Yes, sir.
but you already stopped sharing, I think.
Sorry, sorry. I was not aware of that. Let me reshare
It's
it.
okay. It's okay. Carry on. No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Paper ready 120.
Thank you, everyone. We will be taking a lunch break and we will resume the conference at 1:30 p.m. IST. Thank you. After the 45-minute break, we will be having sessions, keynotes by Dr. Divya Midun Chakravarti, Lincoln University College, Malaysia. And the keynote is going to be on cybersecurity frameworks. And a keynote by Dr. Pelin Anjan from Turkey. And the keynote is going to be on smart security for containers. We will resume at 1:30 p.m. IST. Thank you.
Madam Swati. Madam, your voice is not audible. Madam, your voice is not audible. Please check.
International Conference on Smartphone. So without any further delays, I would like to go with the topic. Mr. Venkat, if anywhere I got struck or if I'm not in the
Madam, your voice is audible, madam. Perfect. You can go ahead.
thank you so much. So just as like a pollution, for the side effect of the industrial revolution, there are many security vulnerabilities that have come with the increased internet connectivity. And cyber attacks or the exploitations of those vulnerabilities for most part of the individuals and businesses. And those businesses have found ways for countering the cyber attacks using a variety of security measures. And just few good common sensible things we will be discussing on here. It can be rightfully said that today's generation lives on the internet. Right? Today's generation, they mainly live on the internet. And we generally users are almost ignorant of how those random bits are ones and zeros rich, how they are rich, how they are securely used in the computers. It's not a magic, it's work and in the speed that makes sure that your package reaches to your answer. So here today, how we are going to see how the cybersecurity makes it all possible. Before we begin, let me brief you all about the topics that we are going to cover in the session. So basically, we are going to ask 3 questions that are important to the cybersecurity. Firstly, we are going to see why cybersecurity is needed. Next, we are going to see what exactly is cybersecurity. And in the end, I'll be showing you how the scenario, how cybersecurity can save a whole organization from organized cyber crime. Okay, let's get started now. So, as I said, we are living in a digital era, whether it's booking a hotel room or ordering some dinner or even booking a cab, we are constantly using the internet. And inherently, constantly we are generating more data. So this data is generally stored on the cloud. It is basically a huge data server or a data center that you can access online. Also, we can use an array of devices to access this data. Now, for a hacker, it's a golden age with so many access points, public IP addresses, and constant traffic, and tons of data to exploit black hat hackers because they are hacking one hell of time exploiting the vulnerabilities and they are creating malicious, smarter, and more creative with their malware and how they bypass these virus scans and firewalls. Still, it is a buffer how many more common types of cyber attacks are there now. So, as you all can see, I have listed out 8 cyber attacks that have plagued us since the beginning of the internet. And so, first on the list, we have the malware. It is all composing term, which is used for a variety of cyber threats, including the Trojan, viruses, and bombs. And this malware is simply defined as the code with a malicious intent that typically steals or destroys something on the computer. And next on the list, you're having phishing. Often it is posing as a request for data from a trusted third-party. Phishing attacks are sent through email and it asks the user to click on a link and enters the personal data. So emails have gotten much more sophisticated in recent years, making it difficult for some people to discern a legitimate user request for information from a false one. So the phishing emails often fall into the same category as spam, but are more harmful than just a simple. And next on the list we have the password attack. This is exactly what it sounds like, a third party to gain access to your system by cracking the user's password. And next up is the DDoS, which is for the distributed denial of service. And our staff focuses on disrupting the service on a network attackers that send high volumes of data or traffic through the network, and it is making a lot of connection requests until the network it is becoming overloaded, and then it can no longer function. Next up, we have the men in middle attacks. By impersonating the endpoint in an online information exchange, this is the connection from your smartphone to the website, and MITM attack, it can obtain the information from the end user and the entity. Here she is communicating with, for example, if you're banking online, the man in the middle would communicate with you by impersonating your bank and communicate with the bank by impersonating you. So the man in the middle would then receive all of the information that is transferred between both the parties, which would include the sensitive data like the bank accounts, personal information. Next is the drive-by downloads to malware on a legitimate website. A program is downloaded to your user system just by visiting the site. It doesn't require all type of action by the user to download it actually. Next up, we have the mal-advertising, which is the way to compromise your computer with malicious code that is downloaded to your system. When you click on an affected ad, it happens. Lastly, we have a rough software, which is basically a malware that are masquerading as legitimate, and here the necessary security software that will be keeping your system safe. So now the internet, sure, it isn't a safe place. So you might think it is. This not only applies for us as individuals, but also for the large organizations. There have been multiple cyber breaches in the past that has compromised the privacy and confidentiality of the data. If we head over to the site called information, beautiful, we can see all this major cyber breaches that have been committed. So you can see big companies like eBay, Google, Evernote, Adobe, they have actually gone through major cyber breaches, even though they have a lot of security measures that they have taken to protect their data that they contain. So it is not only that small individuals are targeted by hackers and other people, but even bigger organizations, they are getting targeted. So the organizations, they are constantly being targeted by these guys. So after looking at all sorts of cyber attacks possible, the breaches of the past, and the sheer amount of data available, we must be thinking that there must be some sort of mechanism and protocol to actually protect us from all these sorts of cyber attacks. And indeed, there in a way, we call it as a cyber security in the computing context. So security comprises of cyber security and physical security. Both are used by the enterprises to protect against unauthorized access to data centers and other compromised systems. So the information security, which is designed to maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data in the subset of cybersecurity. So the use of cybersecurity can help prevent against the cyber attacks data. So the data breaches identifies the threat and it can aid in the risk management. So when an organization has a strong sense of network security and an effective incident response plan, this can be better be able to prevent and mitigate these attacks. For example, if you are using a protection, defense, information, and guards against loss of threat by lots of scanning computers for the malicious codes. The cyber security, they have two main activities that we are trying to protect ourselves against, and they are unauthorized modifications, unauthorized deletion, and unauthorized access. So these freedoms are very synonymous to the very most commonly known CIA triad, which stands for the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The CIA triad is the commonly referred as three pillars of security, and most security policies of bigger organizations and even smaller companies are based on these three principles. So let's go through them one by one. So first on the list we have the confidentiality. Confidentiality is roughly equivalent to the privacy measures that is taken to ensure confidentiality. They are designed mainly to prevent the sensitive information from reaching the wrong people while making sure that the right people can in fact get its access, but must be restricted to those unauthorized to view the data. When questioning common as well for the data to be categorized according to the amount and the type of damage that it could be done. It should fall into intended hands. More or less stringent measures can then be implemented across those categories. Sometimes safeguarding the data confidentiality, they may involve special training for those privacy to such documents. Such training would typically include the security risk that could present this information plainly and can familiarize unauthorized people with risk factors and how to guard against them. All these things will be focused. Further aspects of training that can include the strong password and the password related best practices and the information about social engineering methods to prevent them from bending the data handling rules with good intention and potentially disastrous results. So next on this list is the integrity. So the integrity, it involves maintaining the consistency, accuracy, and trustworthiness of data over its entire life cycle. So the data must not be changed in transit, and the steps must be taken to ensure that data cannot be altered by unauthorized people. For example, in a breach of confidentiality, these measures include the file permissions and user access control versions. So the control may be used to prevent erroneous changes or accidental deletion by the authorized users, becoming a problem. So in addition, some means must be in a place to detect any changes in data that might occur as a result of non-human caused events like electromagnetic pulses or silver theft. Some data might include checksums, even cryptographic checksums for a verification of integrity backup or redundancy that must be able to restore the affected data to its correct state. Last is the availability. So the availability is the best one ensured by the rigorous maintaining of hardware, performing hardware but best immediately when needed, and maintaining a correctly functional operating system environment. It's the free of software conflicts. So it's important to keep current with all necessary system updates, providing adequate communication bandwidth and preventing the occurrences of bottlenecks. They are equally important. So the redundancy, failover, and even high availability clusters will be mitigating serious consequences when the hardware issues do occur fast as an adequate disaster. So the recovery is essential for the worst case scenarios that The capacity is relevant on the existence of the comprehensive disaster recovery plan. So the recovery plan safeguards against data loss or interruptions in connection must include unpredictable events such like natural disasters, a backup copy must be stored in a geographic fireproof water solution. So the extra security equipment or software like firewalls and proxy servers, they can guard us against the downtimes and unreachable data due to the malicious actions like denial of service attack and network intrusions. So now that we have seen, we have actually trying to implement and trying to protect ourselves on the internet. We should also know the ways that we actually protect ourselves when we are attacked by the cyber organization. So the first step to actually mitigate any type of cyber attack is to identify the malware or the cyber threat that is being currently going on in your organization. Next, we have to actually analyze and evaluate all the affected parties and the file systems that have been compromised, and in end we have to patch the whole treatment so that organization they can come back to its original running state without any of the cyber breaches. So how it is actually done? This is mostly done by actually calculating three factors. The first factor is vulnerability, the second factor is threat, and the third is risk. So about the three of them, a little bit. So the first on the list of actual calculation is we have vulnerability. So a vulnerability refers to a known weakness of an asset and that can be exploited by one or more attackers. In other words, it is a known issue that allows an attack to be successful. For example, when a team member resigns or you forget to disable their access to external accounts, you can change the logins or remove their names from the company. Credit cards, so that will be leaving your business open to both unintentional and intentional threats. However, most vulnerabilities they are exploited by the automated attackers and on the human typing on the other side of the network. Next, testing for vulnerabilities. It is critical to ensuring the continuity of your system by identifying the weak points, developing a strategy to respond quickly over there. So here are a few questions that you may ask when determining your security vulnerability. So you have questions like, is your data backed up and stored in a secure offsite location? Or is your data stored in the cloud? If yes, how exactly is it being protected from the cloud vulnerability? What kind of security do you have to determine who can access, modify, or delete information from within your organization? Next, like you could ask questions like what kind of antivirus protection is in use? What are the license current or the license current and it is running as often as you need it? Also, do you have a data recovery plan in the event of vulnerability that is being exploited? So these are the normal questions that one will be asking when actually checking their vulnerability. Next up is the threat. So the threat, it refers to a new or a newly discovered incident with the potential to do harm to your system or your overall organization. So there are mainly three types of threats. National threats like floods, or the unintentional threats like such as an employee mistakenly accessing the wrong information, and the intentional threats there are many examples of intentional threats like spyware, malware, adware companies, adware, all these things. So the companies are the actions of these disgruntled employees. In addition, worms and viruses are characterized as threats because they could potentially cause harm to the organization. Through exposure to an automated attack as opposed to one perpetrated by human beings, although these attacks are generally outside of one's control and it's difficult, once it is essential to take appropriate measures to access these threats regularly. Here are some ways to do so, and ensure that the team members are staying informed of the current trends in the cyber security, so they can quickly identify the new threats that should subscribe to the blogs like YM and podcasts like the Extreme IT Threats that covers those issues. So as well as the joint professional associations, so they can benefit by breaking news, trade conferences, and ISSOT. Next. At the same time, I've shown here the meat box. The aspects is the risk management. So, the risk management. So the risk management, this is one of the key to the cyber security. There's a scenario that you can actually understand how cyber security actually different an organization against the cybercrime, manipulative cybercrime. Cybercrime, as you know, is a global problem that's been dominating the news cycle. It poses a threat to individual security and even bigger threat to the large international companies, banks, and government today. So through the organized cybercrime for our shadow, lone hackers are fast, and now the large organized crime rings function like the startups and often imply highly trained developers who are constantly innovating new online attacks. So the most of the companies, they have the preventive security software to stop these types of attacks. But no matter how secure they are, so the cybercrime is going to happen. So Meatbox is the chief security officer for a company. So that makes a mobile app to help the customer track and manage the finances over there. So the security is the top priority. So Bob's company here is a case study, like an example, has an activity response platform in place. It automates the entire cybersecurity process. So the ERP, Activity Response System software, it integrates all the security and ID software that is needed to keep this large company like the Bob Secure into a single dashboard and acts as a hub for the people processes, and the technology is needed to respond to and to contain the cyber attack. So now let's see how this platform is going to work in the case of security breach. While Bob is out on the business trip, irregular activity occurs on his account. As a user behavior analyst, engine that monitors the account activity, it recognizes a suspicious behavior involving last night, that the logins and the unusual amount of data being downloaded. So this piece of software is the first signal that something is error. Proves that something is error, an alert is sent to the next piece of software in the chain, which is the security information and the event management system. Okay, so now the ARP, activity response, there will be a great chain of events that ultimately prevents the company from encountering a serious security disaster with the ARP. activity response, they will be connecting to a user directory software that the company uses, and it will be immediately recognizing the user's account that is belong to an executor and who is out of the company on the business trip, and then it proceeds a log to this account. Then the ERP sends an incident IP address to the threat intelligence. So the software which identifies the address of the suspected malware server as a piece of security, the software runs the findings. They are recorded in the ERP incident, which is already busy creating a set of instructions. So called, we call it as a playbook. Hold on, please. You can see the playbook. For a security analyst, it follows the analyst and it locks these account and it changes its password the same. So the software has determined the attempted attack came from a well-known cybercrime organization using the stolen credentials. So the credentials were stolen when the hacker found a vulnerability in his company's firewall software and it used to upload a malware infected file. So now we know that how that happened. The analyst uses the ERP and identifies the patches, all the things that the ERP here that uses the information from the endpoint used to determine which machine needs to be patched, and it recommends how to patch them, and then it allows the analyst to push the patches to all the computers and the mobile devices that are instantly found. Meanwhile, communicates which data may have been stolen. He identifies which geographies, jurisdictions, and regulatory agencies cover the user and the information affected by the attack. Then the ERP creates a series of tasks. So the organization here, they can notify the affected party and they follow all the relevant compliances and the procedures in the past. The security breach. So this large would have required Bob's company to involve several agencies and the third parties to solve the problem. The process that could have taken months or longer, but in a matter of hours, the incident response platform, they organized all of the people, processes, and the technology to identify here and they contain the problem. They find the source of the attack and they fix the vulnerability and they notified all the affected parties, and in future B and his team, they will be able to turn the cognitive security tools, and these tools they will read and learn from tens of thousands of trusted publications, the sources of information. So this knowledge, it will be uncovering the new sites and its patterns to anticipate and isolate and minimize the attacks as they happen, and immediately it will recommend actions for the security professionals to take, keeping the data safe and the companies like follow. So the data is the most valuable asset, which is the reason why data security has become an international agenda. The data breaches and security failures, they put the world economy at risk. Realizing the need of the national and economic security, so the US President, they issued an executive order to develop a cybersecurity framework for helping and reducing the cyber risk. Here, the coming slides, we begin with the how the US government recognized the need for the reliable function for securing the national and economic infrastructure to improve the critical infrastructure security. Next, we will discuss on the importance of the security of cybersecurity framework and why it is required in an organization. Then about the different types of frameworks, moving on. And now, here describes the common flow of information and the decisions at the different levels within the organization. Okay. So now let's begin. Recognizing the national and economic security of the United States depends on the reliable function of the critical infrastructure. The President issued Executive Order 13636, which is improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity in February 2013. The order directed NIST to work with stakeholders to develop a voluntary framework which is based on the existing standard guidelines and practices for reducing the cyber risk to critical infrastructure. The Cybersecurity Enhanced Act of 2014 reinforced NIST Execute of Order 13636 rule created through the collaboration that is between the industry and the government. The voluntary framework, it has standard guidelines and practices to promote the protection of critical infrastructure, the prioritized flexible, repeatable, and the cost-effective approach of a framework which helps the owners and operators of the critical infrastructure to manage their cyber-secure related risks. So now, according to Section 7 of the Executive Order, the Secretary of Commerce shall direct the Director of the National Institute of Standards and Technology to lead the development of the framework that to reduce the cyber risk to the critical infrastructure. The cybersecurity framework, it includes a set of standard methodologies, procedures, and processes that align the policy, business, and technological approaches to address the cyber risk. Cybersecurity framework, they shall incorporate voluntary conscious standards and the industry best practice to the fullest extent possible. And let's see why exactly do we need a cybersecurity framework. And here we start with a question. So the framework will help an organization best understand and manage and reduce its cybersecurity risk. It will assist in determining which activities are most important to ensure the critical operations and the service delivery. In turn, that it will help prioritize the investments and maximize the impact of each dollar that is spent on cybersecurity. It results in a shift from complaints to actions and specifies outcomes by providing a common language to address cybersecurity risk management. It is especially helpful in communicating inside and outside the organization. That includes improving the communication awareness and among IT planning and operating units, as well as the senior executives of organizations. So it gives you a measure of where you are and where you need to go, and it can be implemented in stages or degrees which make it more appealing to business. It has built immaturity models and gap analysis, so you don't need additional maturity models on top of the CSF. Organization also can readily use the framework to communicate the current or desired cybersecurity postures between a buyer and a supplier. So what exactly is a cybersecurity framework? The framework is voluntary guidance. It is based on the existing standard guidance and practices for the organizations to better manage and reduce the cybersecurity risks. In addition to helping the organization to manage and reduce the risk, it was designed to foster the risk and the cybersecurity management communication that is among both the internal and external organization stakeholders involved. So now let's see the types of cybersecurity frameworks. So the first type of framework is PCI DSS. PCI DSS. It stands for the Payment Card Industry and Data Security Standard. This is a set of security controls which is required to implement the protected payments account security. It is designed to protect the credit cards, debit cards, and cash card transactions. The second type of framework that we have is the ISO 2007-01 and 27002. It is the International Organization for Standardization. Now, the best practices recommendations for the information security management and information security program elements are from this framework. The third, that buffering versus the CIS, which stands for the Critical Security Controls, a prescribed arrangement of activities for the cyber protection. So this gives particular for known as for the approaches to stop the present most inescapable a few activities with few high outcomes. But the last is the NIST framework, which is made for improvising the critical infrastructure, the cybersecurity with a goal to improve the organization's readiness for managing the cybersecurity risk, while it is leveraging the standard methodology and processes. Now, out of all the frameworks we have just discussed, NIST, this is the most popular framework. This was developed in February 2030 after the US Presidential Executive Order. It was mainly designed to address national and economic challenges and is supposed to be voluntary, at least for private sector. Now it's the objective of the framework. So the cybersecurity frameworks, they prioritize flexible and cost-effective approach. It helps to promote the protection and resilience of the critical infrastructure and other sectors that is important to the economic and national security. So the framework, they are mainly developed to be adaptable, flexible, and scalable by an organization. Also, it should be improve organization's readiness for managing cybersecurity risks. So the framework was designed to be flexible and performance-based, and it should be cost-effective. It should be leverage standard, and the methodologies and processes, and it should promote technological advancement and innovation, and it should be actionable across the enterprise focus on outcomes. Now, it's the components of NIST cybersecurity framework. The cybersecurity framework, here it has three main components, the core implementation tiers and profiles. The framework, or it provides a set of desired cybersecurity activities and outcomes using the common language that is easy to understand. The core guides the organizations in managing and reducing their cybersecurity risks. So in the way that is complementing an organization's existing cybersecurity and risk management processes. Next is the framework implementation tier. It assists an organization by providing the context on how an organization uses the cybersecurity risk management. The tiers, it guides the organization to consider the appropriate level of rigor for the cybersecurity program, and they are often used as a communication tool to discuss the risk appetite mission, priority, and budget. And the last is the framework profile, where here an organization's unique alignment of their organizational requirements and objectives. risk appetite and the resources, they are against the desired outcome of the framework core profiles and are primarily used to identify and prioritize exhibit the characteristics that is defined in the framework. The tiers range from the partial, which is the type 1, to adaptive, which is the type 4, and it describes an increasing degree of rigor and how well this integrated cybersecurity risk decisions are into the broader risk decisions and the degree to which an organization shares and receives the cybersecurity information from the external parties tier. So they do not necessarily represent maturity levels organizations to determine the desired tier, ensuring that the selected level that is meeting up with the organizational goals and is reducing the cybersecurity risk to the level that is acceptable by the organization and it is feasible to implement feasibly and otherwise. So next we have the core. The core, it is a set of desired cybersecurity activities and outcomes which is organized into categories and it is aligned into informative references. So the framework or is designed to do intuitive and to act as a translation layer. It enables the communication between the multidisciplinary teams by using the simplistic and non-technical language. So the core theory consists of 3 parts: function, categories, and subcategories. So the core includes 5-level functions that identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So these 5 functions are not only applicable to the cybersecurity risk management, but also to the risk management at a whole. The core asks an organization to identify what process and assets that need to be protected. So now after assessing that you need to find what protection is available. Then you need to find out what techniques can identify the threat and what techniques can contain the impact of an incident. And finally, the code defines what techniques can restore the capabilities of an organization before the attack happens. All right. Now, let's look deeper into the functions to see what these functions actually do and what purpose they serve these functions. Are at the highest level of abstraction included in the framework, they act as the backbone of the framework or that all other elements are organized around. So the first function is identified. It helps develop an organizational understanding to manage cybersecurity risk. So the system, like the people, assets, the data and the capabilities, the activities and the identified functions are foundational for the effective use of framework. Yeah. So understanding the business context, the resources that support critical functions and related the cybersecurity risk, they enable an organization to focus and to prioritize its efforts and consistent with its risk management strategy. So the examples of outcome categories within this function, they include asset management, business environment, governance, risk assessment, and risk management strategy. Now the next is the protect function. This is to develop and implement appropriate safeguards to ensure the delivery of critical services. The protect function, they support the ability to limit or it contain the impact of a potential cybersecurity event. Example of outcome categories within this function, they include the identify management and access control awareness, and training data security information, protection processes and procedures, maintenance, and the protection technology. The next kind of function is the detect function. This is used to develop and to implement the appropriate activities to identify the occurrence of the cybersecurity event. The detect function here it enables timely discovery of cybersecurity events. Examples of the outcome categories within this function include the anomalies and events, security continuous monitoring, and detection processes. Now next, we have the response function. Now to develop and implement appropriate activities to take action regarding a detected cybersecurity incident, the response function it supports the ability to contain the impact of a potential cybersecurity incident. So the outcome category within this function, it includes the response planning, communication, analysis, mitigation, and improvement. Now the last one is the recover function. Now to develop and implement appropriate activities, to maintain plans for resilience and to restore any capabilities or services that are impaired due to the cybersecurity incident. The recover function, it supports the normal operations to reduce the impact from a normal cybersecurity incident. Examples of the outcome categories within this function, it includes the recovery planning, improvement, and communication. So these 5 functions were selected because they represent the 5 primary pillars for a successful cybersecurity program that aid the organizations in easily expressing their management of cybersecurity risk at a high level and enabling the risk management decision. Now let's see the last component of NIST framework and IST. IST recommends that the framework be customized in a way that maximizes the business value, and that customization is referred to as a profile. So the profiles are an organization's unique alignment of their organizational requirements and objectives, risk attitude, and the resources that are against the desired outcomes of the framework. For profiles, they can be used to identify the opportunity for improving the cybersecurity posture by comparing a current profile with a target profile. So the profiles are about optimizing the cybersecurity framework to best serve the organization. So the framework is voluntary, so there is no right or wrong way to do it. It is the one way of approaching profiles as for the organization to map their cybersecurity requirements or the mission, the objectives, and the operating methodologies with the current practices that is against the subcategories of the framework, or to create a current state profile. The profile, these requirements and objectives, they have to be compared against the current operating state of the organization. This is mainly to gain an understanding of the gaps that is between the two things that are happening. So there's a few steps that is illustrating how an organization could use the framework to create a new cybersecurity program or to improve on an existing program. The steps should be repeated. So as necessary to continuously improve the cybersecurity, the first step is to prioritize and scope the organization. So the organization, it identifies its business mission, objectives, and high-level organizational priorities. So with this information, the organization makes the strategic decision regarding the cybersecurity implementation, and it determines the scope of the system and the assets that support the selected business line or process the framework It can be adapted to support the different business lines or the processes. So within this organization, which may have different business needs and associated risk tolerance. Risk tolerances, they may reflect in a target implementation tier. So the step 2 is to orient yourself. Now, once the scope of the cybersecurity program has been determined for the business line or process, the organization, it identifies the related system and assets, its regulatory requirements, and overall risk approach. So then the organization then consults the sources to identify the threats and vulnerabilities that is applicable to those systems and assets. Next, step 3 is to create a current profile. The organization here develops a current profile by indicating which category and subcategory outcome from the framework or are currently being achieved. If an outcome is partially achieved, noting this fact will help support. The subsequent step by providing the baseline information. The fourth step is to conduct the risk assessment. So this assessment could be guided by an organization's overall risk management process. So previous risk assessment activities, the organization analyzes the operation have on an organization. It is important that organization identifies the emerging risks and they use the cyber threats information from internal and the external sources to gain a better understanding of the livelihood and impact of the cybersecurity event. Next, the fifth step is to create a target profile. Focuses on the assessment of the framework category and may also develop their own additional categories and subcategories to account for unique organizational risk. So the organization, they may also consider the influences and the requirements of the external stakeholders like the sector entities, customers, and the business partners. So when creating a target profile, the target profile should appropriately reflect the criteria within the target implementation file. Step 6. This is to determine, analyze, and prioritize the gaps. The organization has to compare the current profile and the target profile to determine gaps. Next, it creates a prioritized action plan to address the gap that is reflecting mission drivers, costs and benefits, and the risks to achieve the outcome. So in the target profile, the organization, then it will be determining resources that is including the funding and workforce necessary here to address the gaps that is using the profiles in this manner. And it encourages the organization to make informed decisions about the cybersecurity activities, support risk management, and it enables the organization to perform cost-effective targeted improvement. So the last step is to implement action plan. The organization determines which actions to take to address the gaps, if any unidentified in the previous step, and then adjust it with the current cybersecurity practices. To achieve the target profile for further guidance, the framework it identifies, for example, informative reference regarding the categories and subcategories. But the organization should determine which standard guidelines and practices, including those that the sector-specific work that is best for their needs. The organization repeats the steps as needed to continuously access and improve its cybersecurity. For instance, organization has to find that more frequent repetition of audience will be there, And the step improves their quality of risk assessment for the more. So the organization, they have to monitor the progress through iterative updates so that to the current profile. Subsequently, comparing the current profile to the target profile, organizations may also use this process to align their cybersecurity program with the desired framework implementation goal. The framework, it helps and guide key decision points about the risk management activity to the various levels of an organization for supporting risk management. Now, as you can see in this picture, it describes a common flow of information and decisions at the following levels. Within the organization, the levels are executed, business, process, and implementations are operations. The execute of levels here communicates mission priorities, available resources, and overall risk tolerance to within process levels. So the business or process level uses the information as the input into the risk management process and then collaborates with the implementation or operation level to communicate business needs. And then it creates a profile. The implementation or operation level, the implementation operation level communicates the profile implementation progress to the business level. So the business level uses this information to perform an impact assessment. Next, the business level management reports the outcome of that impact assessment to the executive level to inform the organization's overall risk management process and to the implementation operation levels for awareness of business impact here. Okay. So that's what is from me for the cyber security framework. And here discussed NIST has actually changed the whole cyber secure the environment, and since it was released, it is working as well. So I hope this observes something valuable that is important for you. Happy weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Midana Chakravarti, sharing your thoughts and enlightening us. It's an honor to have Dr. Pelin at Middle East Technical University, Ankara, Turkey.
Hello.
Ma'am, we request you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your kind invitation. It's an honor to be giving this speech today. Let me try to share my screen. Okay. I think I need to quit WebEx and rejoin because it's not letting me share my screen right now. I'll be back in a minute. Sorry about that.
Your screen is visible, madam.
Okay, great. Let me try to make it full screen as well. Is it good now?
Yes, madam. Perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks a lot again for inviting me for this speech today. It's been a great conference. I'd like to congratulate all the organizers for this great organization. Today, I'll be talking about smart security for containers, and this is a pretty important topic in the world of cybersecurity today because people are moving to container-based architectures. So first microservices, and then containers, which are the basic elements in these architectures. So we have at Middle East Technical University, we have two labs where we do work on cybersecurity. One of them is WINS, which also works on wireless network systems. And the other is an interdisciplinary lab, which is dedicated to system security completely. So let us get started. So when we're talking about containers, actually, it's best to start talking about cloud computing first, because the use of cloud computing gave rise to this structure of containers. So if we'd like to define cloud computing, NIST has actually defined it for us. Cloud computing is a model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. This shared part is really important actually for security. And those resources could be networks, servers, storage applications, and services, which can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management efforts or service provider interaction. So in this definition, we're talking about a lot of different things actually, and all of these different components have some peculiar properties when it comes to thinking about them in terms of cybersecurity. So here are some characteristics of cloud services. Cloud provides rapid elasticity. It provides on-demand self-service. It provides broad network access, resource pooling, and measured service. So these are all obviously advantages of cloud computing. And these are all the promises of cloud computing, let's say. So to be able to achieve these promises, we need to really we need to reconfigure how we talk about how we use these resources. So there are different service models. And so when cloud computing started, these were the basic three service models: software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. But if you look at cloud service models today, you will see a lot more. So you'll see network function as a service, you'll see security as a service, or you'll see mobile backend as a service, for example. So all services we're getting from the cloud. And we're living in a shared economy today, right? So cloud computing is really important for that shared economy too, because we have limited resources. And even if you think of things in terms of green computing, for example, so computing that does not harm the environment a lot, cloud service models are really advantageous in that manner too, right? So think of a server that's sitting all day, not getting used, but consuming energy. If you're able to rent out that server to somebody, people will not have to buy a lot of resources themselves, and that'll also help them save energy too, actually. So agility is very important in cloud computing. If we look at Oxford Dictionary, how agility is defined there, agile is defined as able to move quickly and easily, right? And this is one promise cloud computing gives us, actually. So cloud agility is really related to rapid provisioning of computer resources. So that really means if you're using a cloud service, you should be able to, especially like if you're using infrastructure as a service, for example, You should be able to create new compute instances, networking and storage in minutes instead of weeks taken by IT, right? So resources should be provisioned very rapidly. And you should also give quick response to changing conditions in business, right? So you get shortened time to market by using cloud resources. Of course, the cloud made all these promises when it entered our lives, but these promises are not really realized easily, right? So there are a lot of challenges in achieving these agility that the cloud promises. So for example, when cloud computing started years ago, like a decade ago, let's say, it was all using virtual machines, right? So to be able to use cloud computing, you need some kind of virtualization. So if you want to rent out, like if you want to create a lot of different machines on your single physical machine, which is what cloud providers like Amazon Web Services does, for example, you need to use some kind of virtualization technology such that you have a single physical resource, but you create different virtual resources, virtual machines on top of that single physical infrastructure, right? So virtualization is actually entering our lives in networks too today. So we're virtualizing our networks because so if you think of the Internet of Things world, for example, you need to be able to run a lot of different applications that have varying network resource requirements. And you cannot create a different network for all of those, right? So that is where network virtualization is coming from, actually. So whenever you have limited resources and you need to do a lot of different things using those resources, you need to share those resources, right? And in a way that makes sense, that optimizes their usage. So that's what cloud computing started with. When it started, it was all the virtualization manner it was using was creating virtual machines on top of the same physical machine, right? But as years passed, people realized that creating those virtual machines takes a lot of time to start with. And then once you have created them, again, they're not as fast as people wanted. So it does not provide the agility required by cloud computing. So we need something that consumes less resources than virtual machines. Another challenge is that we need lightweight, portable application components which we can quickly deploy, right? And again, that is not that quickness is not really provided when we use virtual machines. We need to have geographically distributed mission-critical applications, and those could suffer from limitations in network quality of service. So this agility, again, this problem will be addressed by virtualization in networks, right? So that's another topic which I'm working on too, but we're not going to talk about that today. We'll mostly be focusing on the first two items today, but let's still go over the other challenges in cloud agility, because these are all some research problems which I'm sure some of you would be interested in working on. Again, we need to provision networks to deliver optimal paths between applications, right? And again, enforcement of policies is really important too. So whenever you're working on some resources that do not really belong to you, which in the case of cloud computing, it is like that, right? So you are running your applications on some servers that you do not really own. And some other people could be running other applications on those same physical infrastructure, right? And that brings along some security issues. So you need to enforce your policies in a way, again, that is agile, right? So your policies might need to change a lot, and your system needs to be able to adapt to those policy changes very quickly. Okay, so if we look at the ways people have tried to solve these problems in the years that led to our day, for rapid service deployments and lightweight components and easy service migration, as well as high service uptime, they propose containers. And for flexible service composition and interoperability, they propose microservices. I'm not going to talk about software-defined networks and network functions virtualization today, but again, those were really proposed to bring everything up to speed to provide agility in the network components of cloud architectures. So microservices is actually, some of you might be familiar with this, is very, it's rooted in service-oriented architecture. So service-oriented architecture is an older term which we use for dynamic composition of services. So you do not put the entire functionality in a single service, and you distribute different functions across different services, and you create a service composition where different services talk to each other to achieve a certain functionality. And microservices, we can say, is the new name for service-oriented architecture in the cloud, which of course has its own peculiar properties too. But containers and microservices are the way people are trying to achieve this agility in cloud computing today. So what is a container? A container is a lightweight structure in which an application can be stored, carried, and run on a compatible operating system. It encapsulates its own application logic components, provisioned with minimal resources. So this part is really important. This is what makes containers so lightweight, actually. So there's no need for an embedded operating system in a container, as opposed to a virtual machine, which has its own operating system. And a container can be placed on any host without special configuration. So here, when we're talking about containers, we're talking about virtualization at operating system level rather than hypervisor level, which is what we do in virtual machines. So what is required for a container to run? Obviously, a compatible operating system on which different containers can be run is required. A runtime compatible with containers is required. A platform to manage applications will be required. And so we orchestrate containers just like we orchestrate services, right? So we need a platform, we need a tool to be able to deploy these containers or terminate these containers. So a tool for that is required too. Okay, so here we see the difference between containers and virtual machines. As I mentioned before, when we're talking about virtual machines, a virtual machine will have its own guest operating system, right? So it will be running it on top of its own guest operating system. Of course, so we can run different virtual machines on the same physical infrastructure as we see here. And in this type of virtualization, we see that there is a hypervisor through which all the instructions for all the system calls for different virtual machines will go through to reach the physical infrastructure, the hardware, right? But each virtual machine will come with its own guest operating system. In a container, we have the physical infrastructure again, obviously the hardware. We have an operating system, and on top of that, we have a container engine. And we have different containers running on the same physical machine, but this time we do not have a separate operating system for each container. And that's what makes it lightweight, actually, as I mentioned before. Containers have a lot of advantages over virtual machines. So they provide improved performance, they provide reduced application size. So you will see here that each container has a much smaller size as compared to a full virtual machine, right? And they have increased stability and reduced footprint. These are all important advantages of containers over virtual machines. And then after seeing these advantages, you might wonder why people might still prefer using virtual machines, right? If it offers so much performance improvements over virtual machines. Well, they have their own disadvantages, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if we look at the evolution of containers, we'll see that their roots are in the Linux world. And Google got involved beginning 2006. So it's been a lot of time, actually, since they started using containers. And they actually released Kubernetes for container and container cluster management. Kubernetes today is still used a lot for orchestration of containers. So the way for managing how containers talk to each other, how they're deployed, how they're scaled. Actually, containers provide rapid scalability as well. So if you put them on a Kubernetes cluster, if a container starts receiving a lot of traffic all of a sudden, you will be able to scale it. You'll be able to replicate it immediately to distribute that load. And there are different container technologies. Docker is one of those. It's been a very popular container technology so far. And there are also Linux containers, which are also preferred by some. So here's how Docker works. So when we're talking about a container, actually, we're talking about these containers have images, right? So they come with some libraries packed in them and some application ready to run on top of those libraries, right? So you just put that container on a compatible operating system, and you start it, and it starts running and serving as an application, right? So there are repositories, which we call also registry, which is basically a collection of these container images. So you put a container image in a repository, and then you can start a copy. You can pull a copy of that image from that repository and start running it on your own Docker host. So I'm not going to go into the details of this a lot because this is specific to Docker, but obviously you can orchestrate, you can do the networking of these containers using an orchestration platform like Kubernetes. So how do containers provide agility? They share the same operating system, first of all, to mention again. So that leads to less resource consumption, right? So as opposed to creating a separate guest operating system for each container, they all share the same operating system. And so that means in the case of virtual machines, that's part where you're trying to start a new virtual machine by allocating resources for it on a physical machine takes a lot of time, actually. So if you go to a cloud service provider and try to start a new virtual machine today, you will see that it takes some time. And actually, they will be running slower than containers too. So when you're using containers, you can upload your applications real fast. There is no downtime during application updates. And these really provide increased agility for your applications. So obviously, containers are very portable. And they could have some potential security benefits, but actually, we will see some security downsides too. So if you question where we use these containers, we use them as parts of microservices. And when we look at microservices, how they're different from monolithic applications, in microservices, we really code separate parts, like small parts of applications as services. And we use a composition of those services to get the full task, to achieve the full task we need, right? And those components are very reusable. And actually, most of the enterprise world today is moving towards a microservices-based architecture because of these advantages, because of these agility advantages. So microservices scale by distributing services across servers instead of distributing full copies of the same applications. Okay, and it's used a lot by a lot of companies. Okay, so what are the security problems with containers? So first of all, there has been a high proliferation of container networks. So a lot of people, a lot of companies have moved towards container-based networks. And this move really attracted the attention of attackers, obviously. It revealed the potential of exposing these container networks to many cyber attacks, right? And because containers are a newer technology, as compared to virtual machines, for example, there are more attacks every day against containers, different container structures. So if we go back and think about the figure where we were comparing virtual machines with containers, there was stronger isolation between virtual machines, right? Because each has its own guest operating system. But because containers are all sharing the same operating system, there are some more security problems that are caused by multi-tenancy, which means they're sharing the same resources without very strong isolation between them. And actually, if you go look at these image repositories for Docker, for example, you will see that there are a lot of vulnerable images, right? So when somebody wants to build an application and reuse an image from a repository, if they pull a vulnerable image from the repository, they will be making their own application vulnerable to attacks as well. So software-defined container networks in the cloud are a fairly new concept because of the recency of software-defined networks. And because it's new, there are not robust models for intrusion detection on these networks. And there's actually a lot of work yet to be done in this area. So here are some examples of news that I was able to find when I searched Google for attacks against containers. And you'll see here that the attacks against container infrastructures are increasing every day. So there are different types of attacks. One popular attack is the cryptojacking attack, which allows attackers to run malicious code to use the CPU, GPU, and memory resources for mining cryptocurrencies. And you would be able to find all of these attacks in the common vulnerabilities and exposures framework of MITRE. So the common vulnerabilities and exposures, or CVE for short, is a database that is kept alive by the security company called MITRE in the US. So whenever somebody discovers a new attack, they enter the details of that attack in this database to make it available for all cybersecurity researchers and practitioners. So here are some examples of attacks against containers there. So one is a cryptojacking attack. And another example is a vulnerability that allows attackers to obtain access to the container cluster by creating a service. So again, on the left, you see that research finds that adversaries could detect a misconfigured container within an average of 5 hours. So containers are not very well protected today, and there's a lot of research to be done in this area, actually. So here you see in what parts, what surfaces a container could be attacked. First of all, obviously, insecure networking is one point where your container network could be attacked, right? So you could exploit vulnerable code both on the host application and on the container orchestrator, as well as the host operating system, right? And so you could have a bad image, which you pulled from a repository, which has vulnerabilities in it. There could be a badly configured container image, and your application could be used for secret exposures too. So you see here that the container attack surface is pretty large, and attackers could exploit it in a lot of different ways. So we started this research project actually pretty recently, seeing the vulnerabilities of containers. And what we're trying to do in this project is to create a robust intrusion detection system, real-time intrusion detection and prevention system for container networks. And when doing that, obviously, any intrusion detection system today has some machine learning component in it, right? So you need to be able to automate the detection of intrusions, because you cannot have like people sitting down all day and trying to catch intrusions in a manual manner, right? So we make use of machine learning algorithms for first of all, creating a profile of the system, the normal profile of the container-based system. And then whenever some traffic is received, and it does not have to be network traffic. So one thing you can look at when you're trying to catch intrusions is obviously network traffic, which we call network-based intrusion detection. But also we have host-based intrusion detection. And in the case of containers, that'll be looking at things like system calls, for example. So you get a better intrusion detection system actually by combining these two. So a hybrid intrusion detection system, which makes use of both the network data and the host data, is supposed to give you the best results. And so here's an architecture of what we're proposing. We have containers that are connected through a network, which also communicate with each other, by the way. And then we, at the top layer, so this is an SDN-based architecture, right? It's a software-defined network architecture. At the application layer, we have our traffic classification and intelligence module, which gathers data from the layers below, and it has its own machine learning algorithms, machine learning models running for detecting intrusions. This does not only do anomaly detection, it also actually does classification of the network data to be able to detect different types of attacks. And being able to detect different types of attacks is also important, because that tells you what you need to do with that traffic, right? So you can opt for blocking that traffic completely, or you can redirect it to what we call honeypots for observing what's going on in that traffic in a more detailed manner. So one component we have in our project is a human in the loop. So I always say we should never, ever take the human out of the loop completely, right? Even if you're creating automated systems for intrusion detection, sometimes the machine learning algorithms will not be very successful, right? Or they could make small mistakes too. So we're not going to get 100% accuracy in most of these algorithms, especially if we're facing new types of attacks, right? What we call zero-day attacks. And there we would need to get help from humans to maybe sitting at security operations centers and observing this traffic to create annotations that could be fed back into our intelligence or intrusion detection algorithms to improve the performance of our models. So if you look at the literature on container security, you will see only a handful of approaches proposed so far. And most of those approaches are actually using system call data. So there are not a lot of approaches that are using network data yet. And this really calls for more research in this area. So I think work in container security will be more and more popular, and it will be fruitful for research too. So when we started this project, and we're actually at the beginning of it, but we have some preliminary results. In any case, when you're doing an intrusion detection project, and if you're using machine learning, you'll need data, right, to build your algorithms, to build your models on. And we started by collecting a data set based on real-world attacks on containers. So what we did was to run a search on this CVE database to retrieve recent attacks on containers, right? And you'll see here that because we were at the beginning of 2022, there were not so many attacks as compared to other years when we ran this search. But for example, in 2020 and 2021, the number of attacks exceeded the attacks in previous years, right? And we put the search key container for these attacks. And we saw that, so by the way, if you look at the statistics here, you'll see that the attacks in the years 2019, 2020, and 2021 make up more than 30% of all attacks, right? So that's a big number. And when we ran the search based on container, we were able to find 627 records for all years. And when we ran it for the past 3 years, we found 353 records, which is more than 50%. So that really means the number of attacks against containers is increasing every day. Well, obviously, to do something systematic, you need to look at this container matrix, MITRE container matrix analysis. So MITRE has released this specific matrix for possible attacks against containers. And you see here that this is similar to other matrices released by MITRE, obviously, in terms of the different ways in which containers could be exploited. So we have initial access attacks, execution attacks, privilege escalation, credential access, discovery impact, defense evasion. And what we focused on in our work was privilege escalation and remote code execution attacks. So I'm not going to go into the very fine technical details of this, but we focused on these types of attacks among the in the database to find specific CVEs or codes that were exploited previously. And we found images, container images related to those attacks which were exploited. And we used those images to both model to the normal behavior of the system as well as the attack behavior where we created attacks against those container images. So here's our experimental pipeline. We use Docker images. And so I said a hybrid intrusion detection system is supposed to give the best performance in terms of accuracy. So for that, we looked at both network data and the system call data. So the network data was collected using TCP dump. The system call data was collected using this tool called Sysdig. And then we built different models for intrusion detection using these, and we tested them using different machine learning algorithms, including the ones you see here, mostly decision tree based algorithms, but we also used SVM. I'm not going to talk about these network features, but we use more than 70 network features, which we gathered using a tool called CIC flow meter that we ran on the TCP dump data. And we see that the results were pretty good, actually, when we did binary classification. So in binary classification, we're just trying to detect malicious traffic, right? So we're not really classifying that traffic into a specific attack category. But the results were pretty good. We're still continuing with this project, obviously. So obviously we need to gather a more diverse data set and see whether the results will still be the same. I'll stop here. I think we have a few minutes for questions if you have any. Thank you very much for your attention. Maybe I should stop sharing my screen too. Any questions?
I request the participants, if you have any queries, just raise the hand and you can ask the queries to Professor Pelin.
Good afternoon, Dr. Pelin.
Good afternoon.
So, as an attender, I want to ask one doubt. So, can you hear me?
Sure, yeah.
So the thing is that only one doubt I have. So is TCP dump will bypass the firewall or the Docker? Is there any scope?
Professor, could you repeat your question? Sorry. So
Yes.
will TCP dump?
Is there any chance that TCP dump, through TCP dump, the packet will flow? By that, will it drop the packet somewhere, or it will bypass the firewall or the Docker?
Okay. So we use TCP dump for now, but I think different technologies could be used too. So we could try to, because this will be an SDN-based architecture, we could just try to process the flow data itself as well. In our case, the packets did not get dropped, so there was no bypassing, but different attacks could lead to different situations.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Unknown caller.
Still any questions from the audience?
Hello, ma'am.
I think
Hello.
Notice we can start with the valedictory session because Dr. Pelin and Dr. Sonia both are very busy. Somehow they are managing the time for us. So, so we'll start.
It's an honor. Thank you very much.
Sure, sir. Yeah, good question.
Hello, ma'am. Containers still do not offer the same security and stability that virtual machines can. Like, what is your opinion on this topic?
I actually agree with that. But so that's partly because they're not as isolated as virtual machines, and also because not a lot of people have done research on their security yet. So in the future, we might have more secure container-based architectures too, if people dedicate the time to do research on container security. Yet there's not a lot of work. So security always comes last, unfortunately. So people first start using these architectures and they move to containers because they're very agile and they provide the elasticity required in cloud computing. But they did not consider their security a lot. And so if you look at surveys today, about container adoption in enterprises, you will see that some enterprises are not adopting containers because they have some security concerns. And somebody needs to address those concerns for more widespread adoption of containers.
Madam, I have a small question.
Sure.
As Docker comes under the part of DevOps environment, okay, so security is the inbuilt criteria of DevOps environment. So now you stated a question, some portion where we cannot provide security in all aspects. So when we are dealing with the DevOps, most of the times or most of the article says that security is the integral part of the DevOps. Like we have DevSecOps infrastructure. So whatever we need, we can pull with an image with the Docker, and we can make it done. So in this case, what type of security concerns we may have, although we have a lot of things enabled in the Docker environment?
Yeah, so actually with Docker, you could have a list of images that you know are vulnerable, right? And if you run those checks whenever you're starting a new application on Docker to see if your image has that vulnerability, then maybe you would be fine in that aspect of it. But so these attackers are so clever that to bypass those checks, they sometimes rebuild the image. So they build that vulnerable image in such a way that it's going to rebuild itself after it's deployed on the platform. So there is always a race between security specialists and attackers. And I don't think that race is ever going to stop. So no matter how much you protect your system, there will always be cases where attackers will find other ways to attack your system. So, and for that, like if you make everything isolated, if you do not allow your system to talk to other systems, then you'll be fine, but that's not really possible either. So I always say there is not 100% security in any system, even if you're using a lot of good security practices.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of Department of CSC, KLEF Management, I thank you, ma'am, for providing your gracious presence here to join us for enlightening us with this remarkable keynote.
Thank you very much.
Now, I would like to invite the General Chair of International Conference on Smart DSC 2022, Professor T. Pavan Kumar, Professor and Head of the Department CSC KLEF, to give the remarks about the International Conference.
Thank you very much. Very good afternoon to all. Okay, I am Dr. Pavan Kumar, heading Computer Science and Engineering, Yale University. Okay, it is really a honor to be a part of this delightful international conference. I would like to thank, on behalf of Yale University, my sincere gratitude and heartfulness to the keynote speakers, the chief guests of today's event, and I would also like to thank Dr. Devnath Bhattacharya sir for giving us this opportunity to organize a wonderful international conference. Words are not enough to express my sincere thanks to our guests today, Dr. Professor Ande Prasad sir, Professor Pelin and Dr. Sonia madam, for joining us on the valedictory of this international conference. The conference would not have been the same without your presence. I would like to thank the judges for the exceptional support that you have given on the 3 days of this conference. I would like to thank the participants for the enthusiastic participation on all the 3 days of this event. This event would not have happened, okay, just as an overnight. The wheels started rolling months in advance. I thank all the faculty members from the Department of CSC, the organizing committee. Especially, I would like to thank Dr. Naresh sir and Dr. Bhattacharya sir for the support they have given, okay, from the months earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to invite the editor of the International Conference Smart DSC 2022, Professor Devnath Bhattacharya, sir, to give a few remarks about the international conference.
So can you hear me, everybody? Good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
So whatever I'll tell, it will be less. The unconditional support we got from the speakers, the program chair, conference chair, all the participants, and Dr. Ande Prasad joined just now. So last 2 days, so what 2 days, and including today, so total 3 days. It is a knowledgeable phase we passed. Each and every lectures were very, very informative, resourceful, and personally I thank to Dr. Professor Philip, Professor Sumaila, Professor Snehan Supal from NIT Rourkela, Professor Jose, from Philippines, Professor Khuder from Mongolia. Sonia is always, Sonia and Pelin both. So their support is unconditional with me, Professor Divya. So it is I cannot express in my language what support I got to complete this conference. Last but not the least, the department head, Dr. T. Pawan Kumar, in association with Dr. M.V. Norris. Just amazing to be the part of the conference. As an editor, Dr. Kingsley already told the status of the publication, status of the paper, how rigid we are, how we are selecting good papers. So the people who attended the paper presentation, they can understand that. So I think next year also we can conduct this, hopefully offline. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite the program chair, Dr. Jabale Sonia, to give a few remarks about the international conference.
Thank you very much. I was pleased to attend this 3-day of conference with you. There is very good quality of presentation and of speak noters. I would like to thank the committee organization of this conference and to invite me to participate as a review and as keynote speaker. Thank you very much for all.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to invite the guest for valedictory Smart DSC 2022, Professor Ande Prasad, professor from Vikrama Simhapuri University, to give a few remarks about the international conference.
Hello? Yeah, is it audible?
Yes, sir, it's audible.
Oh. Good afternoon to one and all. It's really great pleasure to be honored as the guest for the valedictory among all you young people. I am glad to participate in 3-day international conference on smart technologies in data science and communication. Technology is best when it brings people together. This is one of my favorite quotations. There is no doubt at all that technology is driving this modern day world. Advanced technology is really happening all over the world at a very fast pace. Invention of new technology is a significant extent in a day-to-day life. The field of technology is an area where the development and progress have been absolutely phenomenal and massive. The technology is diversified and provides various advantages for humans in which it binds people together and creates a sense of unity among them. In no way deny the fact that technology is best when it brings people together. As a matter of fact, this 5th International Conference on Smart Technologies in Data Science and Communication has brought teachers, researchers, and students from all corners of the world to one platform to share their knowledge and views about technology. The keynote speakers from China, Egypt, France, India, Malaysia, Philippines, and Turkey have shared their vast knowledge with the student community by not only broadening their mind with the modern techniques and softwares, but also inspiring the students to take up research as a career. I would like to express my appreciation to all the 600 plus participants from all over the world, mainly from Algeria, Australia, China, Egypt, France, India, Iran, Philippines, Singapore, South Korea, United States of America for their participation to attend this international conference. Finally, I congratulate the editors, advisory board members, all the committees and organizers for making this 3-day international conference on smart technologies in data science and communication a grand success. Thank you one and all for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite the program chair for the International Conference Smart DSC 2022, Dr. S. Sagarimambi ma'am, to give a few remarks about the conference.
Very good afternoon, Vananda. I'm Dr. Sagarimambi, a professor from KL University. So I'm very happy to be a program chair and to be part of this wonderful conference, which is organized by the very smart and hardworking and dedicated team members. So the committee has worked throughout the year to become successful, to make this conference as successful. So we got very vast response from the 5 countries, more than 5 countries and 11 states. Altogether, we received 157 papers. And as we are striving for to impact through the selectivity of quality, selecting the quality and collaborative research papers, we filter those papers and 31 papers are accepted, which are having novel research works. I sincerely hope that after your presentations and the discussions throughout this conference, you can contribute your research work to solve the real world problems in your countries. So here we are very privileged to have keynote speakers from various countries like China, Egypt, France, India, and Malaysia. So overall, 600 participants have participated, as the sir has remarked. So I'm thankful for Devna sir for giving me this opportunity to be a part in this conference. And most of the participants have participated and presented all the papers. So it is very intellectual and it is an interesting conference. So that here we can apply this knowledge in our real life. So I congratulate all the participants to be part in this conference. And I thank once again all 600 participants who allotted the time to join with us. And I also thank all the reviewers who indirectly helped us to select all 31 papers. So thank you, one and all. So it is a great pleasure to meet you all. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite the chair of the conference, Dr. Pelin Anjan, to give a few remarks about the international conference.
I'd like to thank the whole organizing committee and all of the authors of the papers very much for their efforts in putting together such a great work and such a great conference together. It's been a great pleasure to be part of this conference. And congratulations to all those who who submitted their papers and got them accepted and presented them in this conference. And I'd like to thank everybody who has been part of this conference a lot, including our keynote speakers, the organizing committee, and all of the attendees very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now giving the participants to give their reflections on Smart DSC 2022.
A very good evening, sir. Hello.
You are audible, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible, sir. Please carry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Myself, Dr. M. Tirupathi, speaking from Visakhapatnam. So, very good evening to the dignitaries and other participants in the conference. So, first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee of the conference for giving me an opportunity to speak in this valued day of this conference. So, I would like to thank and congratulate the general chair of the conference, so HOD of the CSE department, KL University, and also editor of the conference proceedings, Professor Devnath Bhattacharya sir, and other organizing team for organizing the conference in a successful way. And the important thing what I had observed is the last 3 days, the conference schedule, whatever the given to us or shared with us, the conference had went on excellently well. The time management of the conference was excellently well. So I would like to congratulate the entire committee of the conference for this, for their collective efforts. And I also congratulate all the organizing team for wonderful keynote lectures. So I was following all the keynote lectures. So our total eight keynote lectures were delivered, and mostly all of them are on the healthcare data patterns and bio-inspired computing. So from those 8 lectures or 8 keynotes, I like mostly the 2 lectures, which one was given by Dr. Pal sir from MIT Roorkee on material informatics, and second keynote is given by Philippe Fournier sir from China on automatic discovery of interesting patterns in data. So remaining other lectures are also very good. Personally, those 2 are very useful for my research also. And another important thing is, in normal our Indian conferences we are seeing attending nowadays. So we have 50-50 like foreign and Indian keynote speakers combination. But here today I had observed one important thing is, so out of 8 keynote lectures, so 7 keynotes are given by the foreign professors, which was very unique here. So I would like to congratulate all the organizing team, other editors and general chairs of the conference for doing such a wonderful thing. And another important thing is the time maintenance of the conference. So it was wonderfully done, sir. I would like to congratulate everyone, because whenever if it is 2:30 or 2:45, the keynote is there, within no time gap, the lecture is going to be started. So it is wonderfully organized, sir. So once again, I would like to thank all the organizing team, general chair and editor of the proceedings, Professor Bhattacharya sir. So thank you very much, sir, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Professor Anil, you can speak.
Yes, I'm audible, sir. Hello.
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Good evening. Yes, sir. Good evening, one and all present here. I thank KL University management for giving this opportunity to present my work at the conference. I congratulate the entire team for successful completion of this conference, and this conference was really wonderful. I congratulate Dr. Devnath sir as well as Venkatesh Naresh sir for giving such a wonderful opportunity to come across with number of new research areas wherein I have learned so many things today. And it was really a learning platform for the researchers like me. and I wish all the best for such conference to be organized in future also. And when I look at the keynote speaker, I recollect my childhood memory. I used to watch. There was one serial called. It is during 1990s era. Baba Potli Ki. Every day, every week, we used to have different story. And whenever we attend such conferences, most of the persons are new person, wonderful, really great for great to have such a wonderful resource person. Thank you very much and wish you all the best for your future conference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah, I'm one of the participants, and I would like to share my experience about the conference. The conference was really very well organized, and the keynote sessions were very informative and enlightening. I'm very much thankful to Dr. Debanath Bhattacharya, sir, for all the help and support he extended towards our queries. So thank you, sir, and all for providing us a very good platform in terms of this international conference to showcase our work. And it was really a good learning platform for me also. So sincere thanks to all the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. If any participant wishes to give their reflections on Smart DSC 2022, they can unmute and speak. I thank you all very much for your I thank you all very much for your active participation in this international conference. I hope you enjoyed the program. I would like to thank all the keynote speakers, Dr. Shumaila Javed, Professor Philip von Weiger, Dr. Snehanshu Paul, Dr. Kudir Altangral, Professor Jose El Senor, Dr. Jabali Sonia, Dr. Divya Miduna Chakravarti, and Dr. Pelin Anjan for sharing their valuable thoughts on their area of expertise. I would also like to thank the session chairs, Dr. S. Sagarimambi ma'am, Dr. N. Tirupati Rao sir, Dr. G. Krishna Mohan sir, and Dr. Naga Malik for giving their valuable feedback in the paper presentations. I also thank the managements of the universities and colleges for allowing their faculty and students for attending the international conference. And I also thank head of the department CC and faculty. And I also have to give a special mention to the management of KLU for providing the resources for smooth conduction of the international conference of Smart DSC 2022. Thank you all. Today, there is a special relevance in Indian history. On this day, July 22nd, 1947, the Constituent Assembly of India has adopted the Indian flag. With this end note, may I request all of you to stand up for the national anthem.
जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे